So now when he was this sad, and he is praying to Allah, he has turned away from the people, he is presenting his sorrows before Allah. قالوا, they said. Who said? The rest of the brothers. Or the other family members who were there. They said to him that Tallahi, by Allah, tafta'u, you will not cease, tadhkuru Yusuf, you will remember Yusuf, hatta takuna haradan, until you will become fatally ill. أو تكون من الهالكين, or you will become of those who perish. Instead of comforting him, instead of saying, Father, we apologize for what we did before, what do they say? They begin yelling at their father. They begin scolding him. That why are you remembering Yusuf? Why don't you just get over him? He's gone. It's been so many years. Get over it after all. They say, Tallahi tafta'u, you will not cease. Tafta'u from the root letters, fata hamza. And fata'a is to not cease to be. So, tafta'u meaning you will always, you will continue to. Tadhkuru Yusuf, you will continue to remember Yusuf. Hatta takuna haradan, until you will become fatally ill. Harad is from the root letters ha, ra, dad. And harad is someone who is sick to the point of death. Someone who is so ill, someone who is so sick that he is at the verge of dying. There is no hope of recovery. No hope at all. Someone who is fatally ill. There are no chances of survival. So you will continue to remember the son of yours until this grief will make you harad. It is said that there are different levels of illness in the Arabic language. Like for example, there's the word illah. Illah is also used for illness. But that's the first stage. Similarly, there's saqim. Inni saqim. Ibrahim a.s. said that. And this is when a person is ill, but it cannot be seen by the other. Like for example, you feel unwell, you feel ill, you feel as if your body is hurting. You feel as if you're going to come down with a cold, and you stay in bed. And your sister comes in and she's like, why are you in bed? You're like, I don't feel good. Your voice is completely fine, you're not coughing, you don't have a fever, nothing like that. You're like, then how are you ill? Are you just pretending you're ill? So saqim is who? One who is suffering from an illness, but is inside the body, it cannot be seen by the other. And then there is marid. Marid is also one who is ill, but it is such illness that it can be seen by the other. And then finally there is harad. After many other stages, finally there is harad. And harad is the final stage of illness. And this could be physical as well as emotional. This could be physical and it can also be emotional. And it is such illness in which a person is unable to do anything after that. He's unable to do anything. He becomes completely dependent on others. He's not able to go use the washroom himself. He's not able to eat himself. He's not able to change himself. He's not able to walk himself. He is completely dependent on others. He is unable to do anything. Which is why this word is also used for something that has become useless. It does not have any use left in it. It becomes a burden. So harad is the final stage of illness in which a person becomes completely disabled, in which he becomes completely dependent on others. And this illness could be physical and it can also be emotional. It can also be weakness of the mind. It is also said that harad is weakness of mind or physical illness due to old age. What is it? Weakness of the mind or physical illness. Why? Because of old age. Because it's possible that a person is old, he's very elderly, but he doesn't have any major illness. But because he is old, his body has become weak, then what happens? He's unable to open the refrigerator himself, he's unable to open the microwave himself, he's unable to bend down to pick up his socks himself, he's unable to do his laundry himself, he's unable to go up and down the stairs himself. He becomes completely dependent on others. This is what harad is also. And also weakness of mind, when a person cannot remember basic things. Many times it happens when people, as they age, they develop loss of memory. They're unable to remember even the names of their children. Even the names of their children. It happens. And I'm sure you must have seen this. It is also said that harad is weakness of mind or physical illness because of extreme love. Because of extreme love. When a person is in love with the other, and he is missing them too much, or he's not able to get the one whom they love, then what happens? People become sick sometimes. There is a story that is narrated of someone who was very, very sick, and nobody could figure out what the problem was. They could not diagnose the problem. So somebody was passing by from that town, and he was told about this particular man who was ill. So he was brought. So what did he do? He put his hand on his wrist, and he started mentioning different places, different cities. So when he mentioned a particular city, he felt a change in the pulse. So then what did he do? He started mentioning the different places within that city, the different streets, the different areas. And eventually he figured out that at a particular area, his pulse, there was a slight change in that. Now he concentrated that even more. And he started mentioning the names of the people who were living over there. And finally he got to a particular household in which there was a girl whom this man was in love with. So he said, just get him married to her, and he'll be fine. And he was fine. So it happens when people are in love, and they're unable to get the one whom they love, they become physically ill. Or they become emotionally unstable. You may have seen that sometimes such people, if a person wants to marry another and they're refused, they're rejected, they cut themselves off from the rest of the people, they will stay in their room all day, they will go out at night, they will not meet with their family. Why? Because of extreme love. Similarly, it is also said that harad is due to, this is physical illness or weakness of the mind due to constant grief, continuous grief. That a person has been so sad, extremely sad, that he becomes physically dependent on others, he cannot think straight, he becomes very ill. So they're saying that you will continue to remember Yusuf until you become fatally ill. أَوْ تَكُونَ مِنَ الْهَالِكِينَ, or you will die. So, in other words, stop remembering Yusuf. Because if you continue like this, you're going to die because of this grief of yours. What does he say? قال, he said, إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو بَثِّي وَحُزْنِي إِلَى اللَّهِ. I am only complaining of my suffering and my grief to who? To Allah, not to you. I'm not talking to you. I'm not saying to you that I miss Yusuf. Who am I talking to? My Rabb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنَّمَا أَشْكُو. Ashku from the root letters, Sheen, Kaf, Waw. Shikaya. Shakwun, which is to complain. So I'm only complaining of my bathi, and bath is from the root letters basasa, batha fiha. What does it mean? To spread, to scatter. So bath is such grief that despite much effort, a person is not able to keep it in his heart. It just spreads. Bath is what? It is such grief that spreads. No matter how much a person tries to suppress it, no matter how much a person tries to control it, it just comes out. So Yaqub a.s. as well, he was Kaleem. But it would show, his grief, his sadness would show. Not that he would complain to people, but because he would pray to Allah. How do we show our grief? How do we show our sadness? By complaining to people. By talking to one person, and then another person, and then calling another, and then sending an email to another. This is what? Bas. However, Yaqub a.s., how did he express his grief? Before who? Before his Rabb. وَحُزْنِي, and my grief, my affliction, my sorrow, إِلَى اللَّهِ, to Allah. وَأَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ, and I know from Allah, مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, what you don't know. Meaning, I know that I am going to meet Yusuf. I am very sure. I'm very confident. I'm very hopeful. Because they were saying to him that stop remembering Yusuf. It's been so long. Get over him. But what does he say? That I know from Allah what you don't know. I know that Yusuf had a dream. And that dream is going to come true. And in that dream it was clear that the sun, the moon, the stars were prostrating to who? Yusuf. So this means that we are going to come back together someday. أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So what's the lesson in this for us? That when we are suffering from some loss, from some sorrow, from some grief, from some worry, who should we share that with? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we should really take this seriously. Because we say that we should share with Allah, but when it comes to sharing this with Allah, we don't do that. Think about it. The last time you had a problem, how long did you spend on the phone talking to someone? And how long did you spend making dua to Allah? Think about it. Our problem is that we show our grief to people all the time. And in that we end up complaining about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying words that are inappropriate, that are not right, that are not correct. And with that, instead of inviting the help of Allah, we turn that away even more. What we need to do is that in times of grief and sorrow, we should follow the footsteps of who? Yaqub alayhi salam, and share our griefs with Allah. Ya baniya. And he says that, O my sons, idhabu, all of you go. Fatahassasu min Yusuf. Go and find out about Yusuf. Wa akhihi, and his brothers. Look at him. The way that the difficulty, the hardship, it increases. He lost his one son. And then he lost another one. And because of him, his third son also stayed back. His hope also increases. His hope also increases. Because a believer knows that when the difficulty has increased, then relief is very near. It's very close. It's not too far away. So he says, O my sons, go and search for Yusuf. Go and find him. Tahassasu from the root letters ha, sin, sin, his. And what does his mean? Sense. A physical sense. Like, for example, the sense of hearing, the sense of seeing, touching, smelling. Different senses we have. And tahassus is to search for something using all of one's senses. What does it mean? To search for something using all of one's senses. Like, for example, if you're searching for something in the middle of the night, what are you going to do? You're going to open up your eyes. At the same time, you're going to be feeling. You're going to be hearing, listening very carefully as well. And if it's some food, you're going to be smelling. So, tahassus is to search for something using all of one's senses. There is another word as well which is used for searching, for looking for something, which is tajassus. There is tajassus and there is tahassus. Tahassus is positive. And tajassus is negative. Tajassus is to what? What does tajassus mean? To spy. Or to try to find out about someone's private matters. Someone's private affairs. Where did she go? Who did she call? Who did she speak to? This is what? Someone's private affairs. This is what tajassus is. And tahassus is to search for something, but this is used in a positive sense. So, فَتَحَسَّسُوا مِن Yusuf, search for Yusuf, وَأَخِيهِ, and his brother, and his brothers. Meaning, don't go out as spies. Openly, go and search for Yusuf and his brothers. وَلَا تَيْأَسُوا, and do not despair, do not give up hope, مِن رَوْحِ اللَّهِ, of relief from Allah. Don't give up hope of relief from Allah. It's as though He's telling them, go and search for them and don't come back until you have them. Don't give up hope of relief from Allah. No matter how long it takes, don't give up. Rawh is from the root letters Ra wa Ha, and Rawh basically means comfort, freshness, happiness, refreshment, mercy. And this is why this word is also used for relief. So don't give up of relief, of mercy from Allah, because innahu, indeed He, la yay'asu min rawhillah, He does not give up hope of the mercy of Allah, illa al-qawmul kafirun, except for the disbelieving people. Why do they give up hope of the mercy of Allah, of relief from Allah? Because they don't know about Allah's mercy. They don't know about the promises of Allah. They don't believe in them. And we believe in the promises of Allah. We know that if there is difficulty, relief is coming very soon. So then what happened? The brothers of Yusuf a.s., they left for Egypt to at least get Binyamin and the other brother back to Egypt. If they couldn't find Yusuf, at least they should try to get those two brothers back from Egypt. So after this point, they went to Egypt. What's the lesson in this? That whatever the situation is, no matter what circumstance a person is in, what should he do? He should keep struggling. He should not give up hope of the mercy of Allah. He should not despair. He should trust upon Him. What happens with us sometimes? We want to do something. We try again. It doesn't work, and we think, maybe it's not meant for me. Yaqub a.s. could also have said that maybe this is what Allah wants. That he could have accepted this defeat. That maybe this is what Allah wants. That maybe I'm not meant to see my son. Maybe I'm meant to go through all of these problems in life, and I'm never meant to see my sons again. Maybe it's not meant for me. But we see that he does not give up hope. Our problem is that when we are going through some difficulty, what happens? We give up hope completely. We become ya'us. Ya'usun kafur. That maybe this is not for me. We accept defeat. And this is something that Allah dislikes. He wants us to remain hopeful. He wants us to remain positive. Because in this situation, what is being tested? How much do we trust Allah? Also again, we see the connection between tadbir and tawakkul. That he makes a plan, and he also relies upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He makes dua to Allah, and then he also tells his sons, go and search for them. He doesn't say, okay, fine, just stay at home. And from somewhere or the other, they will come home. No, he says, go and search. Go and find out. Go and find, investigate, see where they are. And also a very other important lesson that we learn from this is that when things get really bad, when things get really, really tough, when you think that it's unbearable, when you think that you're reaching your maximum limit, you cannot be patient anymore, that's it, then you should know that relief is very soon. Relief is very, very soon. It's going to be very soon. It's going to come very soon. Because if you think about it, when the night comes, initially there is darkness. At Maghrib, all the way up until Isha, there is darkness, but still there is some light. But then in the middle of the night, it becomes extremely dark. Extremely dark. And then what happens? Gradually, the morning comes in. And this is how problems and difficulties are. That initially it seems bearable. But as the problems, they escalate, as they increase, we think this is the end of everything. But in fact, this is the end of the problem. Very soon, it's going to be over. We see that Yaqub a.s., when he lost Yusuf, he was very sad. But when he lost Binyamin as well, he knew that very soon he was going to find Yusuf. Look at how hopeful he becomes over here. He's extremely sad. Yes, he's very sad, but he does not give up hope. His hope only increases. And he says, oh my sons, go and search for Yusuf. Go and find him. He did not send them all these years, but he sends them now. Why? Why does he send them now? Because he knows that now the problems have escalated, and now relief is going to come very soon. But usually, what is our behavior? When the problems escalate, we give up. If all those years we have been patient, we haven't yelled at someone, we have been forgiving towards them, there comes a point when the problems, they increase so much, and what happens? We begin yelling at them. We begin screaming at them. And this is the point where we either preserve and secure our reward, or we wash it away ourselves. This is the point. Just imagine all of those years that you've been patient. You have struggled. You have endured. You have controlled yourself. Now comes a point where you can preserve that reward, or you can do something in which all that reward is washed away. But many times, unfortunately, we fail. It is only a few people who, by the mercy of Allah, realize that if the difficulties are escalating, then relief is coming very soon. And because of that, they remain positive, even in such situations. We listen to the recitation.
Just thinking about how he still called his children Ya Bunayya, and he still told them to go and search for them and don't give up a hope of a mercy. And it's a lesson for a parent. Like, you raise your children, you put efforts on them, and then they hurt you, and you're still giving them, turning them back to Allah, and you're not being distanced from them. I had a case where a daughter called the police on her mother because her father and her mother were not getting along. So the mother was in our office, and she's like, I don't want to see her, I don't want to do anything with her, take her away from me. If she dies, it's even better for me. And we learn a lesson how forgiving and merciful is Yaqub alayhi salam.
Exactly. That despite the fact how his children has been, that even at this point they're yelling at him instead of comforting him, instead of crying with him, instead of giving him a hug, instead of saying, Dad, we're sorry, they begin yelling at him. But look at his forgiveness, look at his big heart, that he doesn't tell them to go away. He gives them hope, that go and search for Yusuf and his brothers and don't give up hope of Allah.
I was just thinking about the transition between when the one brother was telling them to go tell your father this and this and this as the excuses, and then the very next verse is they've already told the father. And I was thinking about how, like, in movies and TV shows today, like, they have this technique where they'll zoom in on something, and then when they zoom out, the scene's completely different. So it's kind of like the same technique here, where they kind of zoom in on this one brother who's saying, tell your father this, and then when they zoom out, now the scene is different. They're back at home, and the father already listened to the person saying that. So it's like 1400 years before, Allah already had this technique.
Exactly. This is why it's ahsan al-qasas. The Quran is the best speech, and the story is the best of the stories, because of the way it has been narrated. That it's brief, it's concise, it's very descriptive. There's one scene after the other. The transition is amazing.
Assalamu alaikum. I was just yesterday's lesson and today's lesson, I was just wondering that how your past comes back to you again and again. And it's a lesson for all of us, especially young girls, that if you think that you can do something wrong, and then after a couple of years you'll forget it. We see with the case of Aziz's wife, and then with the case of the brothers, how their past is still haunting them.
Exactly. Very true. That what you do, it comes back to you. You have to see the consequences in your own life. When you cause harm to someone and you think nothing will happen to you, remember that something will happen. It will come back to you.
Assalamu alaikum. Sometimes when they call him on the ayah 78, the brother call him as a Muslim. Sometimes people, because of their status, the position they have, they compromise because of their family, whatever the rule and the law, they compromise them with them.
Yes.
Because even Yusuf alayhi salam knows his father will be suffering because he lost him and he lost his son, but still because of the position he had, they didn't compromise with their brothers.
Yes. Very good point. That Yusuf a.s. was a muhsin, and the brothers, they called him muhsin. And they said that please keep one of us instead of Binyamin, because his father will be very sad. But what did we learn? That, oh believers, stand up for justice. Right? Stand up for truth. Stand up for justice. Even if it's against yourself. Even if it's against your family. So if the cup was discovered from the bag of Binyamin, and he was to be punished, and although his father was going to suffer, although his brothers were requesting, Yusuf a.s. did not change the law. He did not change the law.
I was just thinking, whole lesson I learned one thing for myself, وَفَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, and how I was connecting these things, that we don't believe in this thing completely. We don't have conviction. Though we say, but actually where we are making mistake, we don't really have it in heart, and we lost the sabr and tawakkul as well. How? I was just letting this way, that all possible things, that strategies and the ways we're using to deal the situation, when we get failed, we thought, okay, we tried and we failed. And then we think that we made the dua and still things are not working. So our strategies and dua at the same time, we're putting all the efforts, but when they don't work, we forget that for everything there is a time.
Exactly.
And Allah knows that. And in this situation, I was relating how it helped Yusuf alayhi salam. If we remember when the story began, the brothers wanted the Yusuf alayhi salam to get their father's face empty from it. Like this face, they thought was very prominent because of his being muhsin. They wanted to get him away. And now, on the end of the story, they themselves call him, we see you muhsin. With the time, that was a time, if they realized in time, maybe things didn't get worse up. But they learned it with time. And then again, the sons, Yaqub alayhi salam, wanted many things to be learned them as well. And of course for us as well, there is a lesson. But they learned again with the time. Now they realize, I'm not going to go back. I have already made mistake in the past. I'm not going to repeat it. So there is a time we need to realize that thing.
Yes. And for this, what is required is patience on the part of those who are above the rest of the people. Like for example, Yaqub alayhi salam, it must have been very frustrating for him that why don't his children understand? But he knew that it takes time for people to learn.
I just want to say that Yaqub alayhi salam, he cried to the extent that he became blind. And it just goes to show that we're humans and we have emotions, and crying or weeping and grieving, these are emotions that are permissible. And many times people think that after 3 days it's not permissible to even cry. But it's just important that you don't let your emotions get the best of you, where you leave your salah and you leave your fard.
Exactly. And remember that hadith that Allah will not punish you for crying, for feeling sad, but He will punish you for what you say.
Right. So it's just important to hold your tongue and not to utter anything that would be displeasing to Allah.
Okay, we'll end over here. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.